This production serves to explain certain truths about living, our universe, and human interaction that are either hardly known or seen from an ideologically conditioned point of view. Traditional Western science had no idea of the living and of systems. It had no idea of patterns. It had no understanding of motion, of flow, of self-organization, or total communication, and of the energy that is behind all this, the cosmic life energy. It was a club of adult schoolboys who secretly masturbate on public toilets and who hide behind their social masks and their doctor titles, men whose fundamental worldview is flawed by shame and denial and by sadism and the cynical and cruel attacks on the true scientists, men like Galileo, Leonardo, Bruno, Paracelsus, Goethe, Kepler, Mesmer, and Reich, and many others. This task would be impossible without considering the universal laws that can be known and understood by the study of and divination with the I Ching. Studying the I Ching or the Tarot was not for me a form of l'art pour l'art, but it had a practical purpose. I wanted to understand the underlying patterns of life and the roots of human behavior. And indeed, my understanding of life and living was greatly enhanced through not only the knowledge about divination, but through actually practicing divination at a daily basis since now about 15 years. These years, and not only theoretical but also eminently practical learning and daily experience with coaching highly problematic people, rooted me in my new profession as a coach, and with that decision, my former career as an international lawyer clearly found an end. My motivation for changing my professional career was the outcome of a deep reflection about the sense of life and my mission. I understood that I am interested in human beings and in their paths of life. The law profession, while it interested me in some way, was not satisfying my desire to help people grow, to facilitate their relationships, to help them lead happier lives. The I Ching supported me on my way to find my true mission. Understanding ourselves and others is impossible without comprehending the underlying cosmic patterns of living. Human beings do not function differently from the rest of life on Earth. Besides that, they are rooted in a universal scheme of cosmic interactions that is little known or totally unknown to psychologists today. I have stressed in all my publications the importance of understanding the nature of our universe as a basically patterned universe, observing patterned intelligence or patterned organization when we observe nature. What are patterns? I began identifying the perennial pro-life patterns in living by firstly invalidating the fake principles that mainstream Western science declares to be the founding concepts of our universe. To put it more precisely, there was actually nothing to invalidate. I found that these alleged principles were but intellectual assumptions and thus simply invalid as founding principles of life. At the same time, diligent study of the I Ching and almost daily use of it for divination during more than 20 years distilled in me an intuitive understanding of the real and valid patterns that are inherent in all living. I therefore simply call them patterns of living. Let me first of all explain why I use the term patterns, consciously deciding to discontinue the use of the term principles, I indeed think that there we are facing a key point that marks the essential difference between death science and life science. A pattern is a set of things, a certain arrangement I can make out in the complex scheme of reality. It is something I can observe. A pattern can be fixed or it can be changeable. It can be static or dynamic. By contrast, a principle typically is the start of a down hierarchy. It's atop something in a kind of up to down order. It is not something I can observe. Its reality is merely intellectual, the outcome of a conclusion that I draw in my rational mind after observing nature. A principle thus contains my observer point and my judgment about reality. Death science looks at life through the glasses of principles it has set before it was going to observe. It is essentially blind, and it proceeds by imposing characteristics upon nature. Western science traditionally has been death science. It gained its conclusions about life by vivisecting cadavers, not by observing the moving changes of living. It is and remained a cadaver science that is far removed from the changing patterns of reality. Life science looks at life without any set principles or assumptions and observes the dynamic patterns or changes in the texture of life. It is a science that, since its start in China around 5,000 years ago, was interested in life and thus drew conclusions from life and not from death. Traditional Chinese science, together with most other ancient science traditions of the East, is a life science, one branch of this very large body of science and philosophy being feng shui. The I Ching is based upon life science and is perhaps the highest condensation of it. Needless to add that, as such, it is non-judgmental and thus bears no moralistic judgments about human behavior. It looks at human behavior in exactly the way it looks at all life patterns and sees the changing nature of it before all.